Hey everyone. One of the cool optional products that you can get for Savage Worlds is called the Adventure Deck. And that has cards that have cool images on them, but also have situation rules that can enhance your play, make the bad guys do bad, make the good guys do good. And you know what? I think we should talk about that today. Savage World, one of the best games of the day. Hey everyone, it's Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd love your likes, subscribes, all that good stuff. And we've got a special guest today, Jeff Sprang, founder of Cartoon Villains. And he knows a lot about adventure decks, and he'll tell you more about it because he's created one. And we'll just leave the hint there for now. And then we'll throw it over. Jeff, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody what makes you you.
Well, I got into gaming, and was it 81 or 82 with the red box, the one that had the green dragon on the front.
Oh, cool.
I think that's the Moldave set, I believe. Played a lot of games since then, even some really rare ones. Are you familiar with Harnmaster?
Yeah, I've heard about that one. Yep.
I'm a huge Harnmaster fan, so crunchy game.
Yeah.
So I want to take this opportunity to thank you, because when I first started getting into Savage World, I made a decision that I was going to start playing Savage Worlds because of virtual tabletops. And your videos were a big help in learning a bunch of things about Savage Worlds that I didn't know, because I think I played at a friend's house a superhero game previous to that. So thank you.
Well, that's an interesting way to get into Savage Worlds, is through the Superpowers Companion. That's like jumping in hard. So
if I can handle Hardmaster, I can handle that.
Oh, sure.
But I really, I looked at a lot of systems for Foundry, and Suede was one of the best. And that led me to, we've had a Wednesday night game going since 2019 now. And out of that has come some of the ideas for the products I'll be creating. So I decided to take Cartoon Villains, which is the name of our gaming group, and turn it into a Foundry module company. So I'm doing VTT only releases. And the reason for that is there's things that you need in a module that you don't need in a PDF, and vice versa, right? The way you present the data, how much you present, all those things really change when you're sitting in front of a screen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I play almost entirely, except for conventions, on virtual tabletops. And so having the tools work for you as opposed to you working for the tools is just fantastic, and they do a pretty good job in Foundry for sure. So excellent. Why are we here? We are here to talk about the Adventure Deck. What are they? How do you use them? Tips, tricks, all that kind of good stuff on bringing those into your game. I know a lot of people like using Adventure Decks. They're fun, but for those Savage Worlds players, but it's an optional thing. So some people don't really know they even exist, or have heard about them and they don't know how they fit into the game. So Jeff, tell me, what's an adventure deck, venture card? How do you use them? How are they integrated into the game?
Well, it's a deck of cards that has, let's call them, abilities that are outside the scope of normal edges. Some of them might look like an edge, and they're one time, use the card. Usually the event is over when you use the card. It's a way to inject more randomness and that fast, furious fun into your games, right? That everyone loves those moments of surprise at the table, right? And the deck it's just like when you're playing Magic or any, you slap a card down that someone forgot about, right? The GM forgot about giving it to you, earlier that night, and you're like, bam, there it is. right? So you get those memorable moments at the table, right? The effects, they're nice, and they have they're game mechanics and stuff, but really what they're about is that moment at the table, I think. What do you think?
Well, I think the best thing about them is, again, they've got mechanical effects on the game. Like, for example, there's one called Call in the Cavalry, where some group of people not related to you who come and help you and save you isn't like it's not like a mechanical specifics. It's just a role-playing opportunity that gives you a benefit, and they're really cool because the players can hold them, and at just the right moment when you think you've got them, suddenly they're playing a card that has this, like, what is that? You get all your PowerPoints back? What you do this? What? Oh, wow. And it just changes the nature of the game, and it's just a lot of fun. And I use them like in every game I play. I use the adventure deck. Unfortunately, I had to put it into Foundry all by myself, but
Yeah, and I agree. You can divide the cards into essentially two categories, and some are hybrid, mechanical effects, and there's a few cards that are narrative, right? They just affect the narrative of the game somehow, and those can. I think there's only one game, and you probably know the card I'm talking about. I think everyone tends to not like love interest.
Oh, yeah.
If you're gonna call a card, that's usually the one.
Yeah, that one is where somebody's going to fall madly in love with your character, and weird things happen with that card.
Yeah. I'm not worried about someone being inappropriate. I'm more, you're machine gunning aliens, right? And then all of a sudden, love interest comes out. You're like, what's going on?
That alien queen has a special look in her eye. So,
yeah, I mean, so it can just kind of reverse directions on a mood, and I think that's why most people might. Okay, so I was talking about the fact that most people don't realize when they're talking about the cards. One of the big complaints about the cards that I've heard is, that one card might be too powerful, or I don't like this card. But really, you should be, as a GM, you should be culling that deck, before your sessions, right? There's always going to be a few that just don't rub you the right way, right? And you don't like that particular card. And you can get those little bonus packs, right? You got the normal, the pulp one, and then there's one for superheroes.
Got it right.
There's one for one for Deadlands, and fantasy. Is that the other one?
I think there is one for fantasy too. I think so.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if it's Pathfinder or just plain old fantasy. I think, I think it's fantasy. So that leaves nothing for horror and nothing for sci-fi as of yet for extra cards.
As of yet. Yeah, definitely as of yet. So
yeah, I mean,
and what they do is lots of times is they just, like, for Superpowers Companion, there's just a few extra cards that go in. It's not necessarily have to be a full deck. You can get little, I guess, booster packs almost that would fit into your adventure deck. So, but that culling is you brought up culling. That's a very important thing. If you've got a certain feeling of your game, a theme of your game, you really should go through, pick out the cards that just don't match what you're trying to evoke, and things that'll just break the immersion. Or, like, you can use adventure decks for, like, horror, but you wouldn't want to have certain cards in because they're either too powerful or they don't fit narratively. Or so definitely culling the deck is one of the very important point that I don't want to miss. I want to make sure we highlight that you brought up.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important. It can, it can change a game into something that you don't want. We just had a thought. Talking about that. No, the big one is you're playing with no PowerPoints, and there's lots of get your PowerPoints back type effects in there. I think there's like one or two. So, those are the kind of things, if you're not using a particular rule, you should remove that card.
Yeah, and that's a little tougher with some of the.
Yeah, I mean, I love it because it just spices up the table in a way that you can get results that are always give shock and awe.
Yeah. So what's from a mechanical standpoint? How do they play within the game? I think the core rules that come with it in the box, so to speak, says you get one adventure card per rank at the beginning of the session, and then you can play one anytime.
Well, let's start at the beginning, right? If we're going to talk about the nitty-gritty of the rules,
I was trying.
You're supposed to. Oh no! Because I think this is important, and we'll get to why I think it's important because I've changed it in mine.
Yeah.
The whole picking up the cards at the end of every session and reshuffling, right? That's actually a rule. I don't do that.
I don't either.
Because there's cards that let you like tutor the deck looking for cards, right? And those cards become less important if you're always picking them up and making a full deck at the end of every session, right? If there's no discard to go tooling around in, it's not as fun. So, yeah, we don't do that in my games. And I know, because from watching your videos, that you only like to hand out one card per session.
Yep, but you can trade the card you have at the beginning of the session.
Oh yeah,
for a new card.
Yeah, I mean that says that explicitly in the rules, but yeah, I mean you can play a card on someone else's behalf. You can trade it at any time, not just when you get it. And your how many cards you get in the rules as written, like you said, is one per rank. And then if you have that Destiny's Edge, which is available when you buy the deck, which allows you to get an extra card on the draw and play an extra card during a session instead of the one card that you get to play most of the time. I like the edge. If someone wants to spend an edge on that, okay. All right. You must really like adventure cards. I mean, you could have Elan, but, you
could have Elan, but, you want adventure cards. That's okay. That's okay.
All right. You're wrong, but
you're wrong. As long as you're having fun, you're having fun. So I don't think I've ever had a player ever take that edge or even think about that edge or even bring it up in a conversation. So
it's not a great edge, and anyone that looks at it was like, yeah, I'd rather have something else. But to be honest, I think a lot of people don't even know it exists, right? Because when you get the deck, all the rules are on that one extra card that's in the deck, right?
Right. Yep.
So, that's not in a rule book anywhere. So,
yeah, it's easy to forget about it for sure. So we already so that's kind of the basis. Anytime during play, while the game is going on, the player can, once per game, play that. Again, except for some of these unique situations, can play that card, and the effect is immediate, and it's. That's sort of that's it, right? That's the mechanics behind the adventure cards. You deal them, you hold them, and you play them whenever you need to get that effect going in the game and surprise everybody with this craziness that's going to ensue based on it. There's not a lot to it as far as the rules go, honestly. What do you think? You think that they're pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, I would say they designed it that when you read the card, it should make sense, right? It's literally the rules are on the card.
Yes.
For the moment. So, as long as the card is, well written, you don't have to do that much.
So, like, for example, I can find it. For example, in one of my superpowers companion cards, they have To the Rescue is the title. It says, play this card to place civilians in danger as the GM deems appropriate in the current encounter. Each hero who spends an entire turn rescuing or protecting the innocent earns a Benny. This may be done repeatedly until all civilians are safe. Everything's on the card, what you need to do, the benefit, the bonus you get from it, and this happens to be one from the Superpowers companion. So yeah, they're real straightforward. It just everything's there you need to. Occasionally there's a little interpretation, but there's a lot of it's like the GM. What does the GM deem make sense as well? So Really cool stuff. So that's the basics, right? Nobody does the basics. We already talked about I do one card and you can trade the card, and that's not what's rules is written. So what are some of the interesting ways we can tweak adventure cards to make them more unique, within the framework of the game?
Well, one of the things that I'm doing with ours, and I started doing this as a house rule, but then when I started designing adventure cards, I decided this is how it's going to be. I used that rule about rank to be your hand size, right? How many cards you can keep, right? So when you're a peon, you don't get to keep. You have less choices, right? And we did it that when you hit expert, you can get 2 cards a session instead of 1, because you're a badass now, so you get 2 cards. But then it caps at 2.
Okay.
So you have a hand size, and then you have a cap. And because the other way, there's 54 cards in the deck.
Yes.
How many people do you play with? 4 normally?
I got 5 in my group, but yeah, basically 4 or 5. Yeah.
Well, think about this: if you're playing with a group of high-level players and they're each getting 4 or 5 cards, right? That's 10% of the deck in one sitting. So, so I want to make it last, right, throughout the campaign. So, limiting the cards, I think, is a good thing. Whether you want to do 1 card or like my group does it, 2 cards when you get to higher level.
Yeah, I think that's when you have high level players with lots of cards, then basically the cards that are the best cards, and there's some cards that are just better than others. Let's be honest, and they're going to be playing those all the time because they're going to have them in their hand, and it's not going to be interesting, and you're not adding flavor like you can with it. So, and it's kind of fun to have players get the right card, and then they kind of keep it for a little bit, and they go, when's the right time to really hit everybody with this one? And and the big they're holding on for a little while of their return, giving all power points back, and they're in a huge battle, and then they go, you know what, I've held this for 2 sessions, I'm going to play it now. And you go, oh my god. So letting them keep the cards between sessions, limiting the cards a little bit so that it's not always the same cards that they're pulling out of their hand, their big mitt full of cards. Those are a couple of ideas. What other things do you think are ways to tweak the system that makes it a little more interesting that you might be using in your product?
Well, what I started doing is not so much with the cards as written. I did a full set of my own cards, and I highlighted mechanics that I like in the game. Like I have a card that's very similar to the taunt ability. It kind of lets you borrow taunt with a card, and people look at the card and they're like, oh, this is right. It dawns in their head that this card is like taunt.
Oh, okay.
I could be right, and I could be using that. Or I like a lot of dark urban fantasy settings, so there's a lot of ritual magic. So I made a few cards that are about casting ritual magic. I did a couple of cards that are about bonuses or effects during dramatic tasks. I even have a card that grants, at the earliest convenience now, an interlude.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, because, I do like the fact that some of the cards just purely have like a narrative outcome, right? They don't really affect a combat. They add flavor, right? And so I made an interlude card because we really enjoy doing interludes in our setting, and we've made up particular interlude rules for our setting that are a little different than the book too, on top of that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wish I did interludes more. I'm terrible at interludes. If you watch my videos way down, in the below 100, there's a video on I should use interludes more. I don't.
Let me give you a tip, and you can see if you can use this one. Do you do a lot of futuristic and modern settings?
We are
compared
right
to fantasy?
We just ran a fantasy campaign that took a long time, but generally more post-apocalypse, sci-fi, modern. Right now we're doing a brand new science fiction setting.
Okay, so on travel in a spaceship or in a vehicle, you can turn it into a Quentin Tarantino movie with an interlude, right? Right. You give them a subject and you say go. Right. Don't use the mechanics from the game because that may not be pertinent. But let them talk about something that they already want to talk about, right? Themselves, something that happened on the in the last battle as they're leaving in the chopper, right? Just those kinds of right, and just let them go. And if they'll do it because you get a Benny, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so
And
think
they like
about
doing
that.
it anyway. They love the role play. It's just I have to give them that opportunity, right? And say, here's that moment. Take that moment, and then
What we
they'll bring
started
the
doing
rest.
is using like a code for it, right? In the game, if we're driving or in a vehicle somewhere, or there's some narrative where food is involved,
Okay.
those code words are, oh, we're doing an interlude now. Right. If someone goes, hey, you want to get pizza? What they really mean is, I want an interlude right now.
That's interesting. I need a Royale with cheese, and then it's time to do it.
Well, you can get those wacky conversations, right? Like you get in like Reservoir Dogs that way, right? They'll talk about their favorite gun, right, in character, and just crazy stuff.
That's cool. That's a great idea. I think I'll try to take advantage of that because again, they're going to be traveling a lot on a ship. They basically own a ship, and they're part of this, I don't know, A-team type task force that gets hired to do and solve problems kind of thing. So they'll be on the ship for a lot. So it'll be great. That makes a lot of sense. That's cool. That's
I
cool.
mean, yeah, that's one of the. I don't know if you're a Cowboy Bebop fan, but there was one episode where it's just them going about their day, one day on the ship, right? I think they ran out of gas or they ran out of money, and they were hungry, and the whole episode is about that, right? And you can make it work, and you'd be surprised what you get.
Interesting. That's cool. So circling us back, so now we could do a whole episode on interludes, but circling us back to
Sorry.
no, it's not your fault. I was all over that. So circling back to the adventure, I even forgot what we're talking about. The adventure cards. Just circling back to the adventure cards.
They're just another way to reward players and make these situations that are memorable. And I've expanded that in the stuff that I'm working on to include all the mechanics that I like. There's no horror card, so my whole deck is modern horror. Mine a little darker than the standard ones, right? Because the other ones are kind of pulp.
Sure.
And the other bit is I made up a few cards that you can only play once per campaign. They're a little bit more powerful, and yeah, so they get banished instead of into the discard pile.
Don't have to rip them up, right? You could still.
No. No, it's not a chaos orb.
So what kind of card would be a card that you could only use once per campaign? What's an example of that?
Sure. Do you have that Gmail drive that I sent you a link?
Funeral for a friend. A beloved family member, friend, or ally has died mysteriously. All party members gain a conviction point. The GM will introduce an investigation scenario at their earliest convenience. If this card has already been played this campaign, draw another card. Okay. All right. So
obviously, if that got played a bunch because it got reshuffled back in, you'd have a lot of funerals you'd be going to, right? So you don't want that. You want it if it happens to be one time in a campaign, someone dies.
You're
right.
killing off all the family members of players anyway as part of their backstory problems that they have, right? Well, that's cool. So a card just for a campaign. Nice. I had never thought of having cards that just sort of. I mean, I guess the cards are per session kind of thing. You could maybe have cards per, longer term adventure, and you could have cards for a campaign. I mean, I could see having things that based on the power level that they would offer and the things that they bring to the table. That's a pretty good idea. That's interesting, especially for folks who are tweaking the cards and building sort of their own cards out a little bit for their own
Yep.
games. So that's a great. See, you had tips. You had more tips right there. So, so we already started. See, I think that was a great segue right into the cards. So let's talk about your project.
Yeah, so the Deck of Shadows is what I've learned about adventure cards and what I needed for, I'm consuming my own product, right? I made it for a modern horror setting, and we're using it. So, it's what I needed, and I looked at it and went, you know what? I bet someone else might like this too, right? So it's all those great ideas, and I'm a programmer for, my day job. So I looked at doing some Foundry stuff. So I've taken the deck, and I'm going to be doing, animations, and I'm actually going to automate the cards.
Okay.
So
okay,
you can play them in my module when they come out to the play surface, and then when you drag it into a magic portal, the card macro executes. So, like, if it gives you a bonus, it will, and I would say 9 out of 10 cases that I can automatically apply that bonus. There's a few things that can't be done in the Suede core module, and those will still have to be done by hand. But for the most part, I can get probably 80% of it, where it just does it for you.
That's a pretty cool idea, because I was looking at some of these cards. Like, I mean, it'd be not that hard. Like John Wick mode. For the duration of the encounter, add 1d6 to all your damage rolls against all extras. That should be pretty straightforward to program in and make it so that the player can play it and then have the effect right away. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And most of those I'm going to be putting, to get into technical terms with Foundry, I'm going to be giving an active effect. I don't know if you've ever looked at that on the character sheet. It's a little... Yeah. So you give them an active effect, and then when the encounter, you have to turn it on and off manually. It's essentially a little button that gets put on the character sheet that goes, give me the bonus now. And then, if you click the off button, it's gone. And you can delete that active effect too.
Right. Okay. That's cool. Yeah. There's a lot you can do with the Foundry module for Suede Core. They did a pretty good job. Tell me more. I want to hear more about it. So I read a couple of cards. What inspired you? You talked about what inspired you to do it. Where is they can't see the art. Hopefully I'll pull a couple cards down and put it in the video when I'm doing this. But where did the art come from? What's the style that you're going for, and all that kind of stuff?
I have a few friends that do art, and a lot of it was, I'm a nut. When I do campaigns, I go all in. I've bought, probably for the past 5 years, I've bought artwork from Fiverr.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a lot of that is just repurposed because this all came out of my campaign. So
okay.
The idea.
So the people are getting a little insight into your brain, is what you're saying. How you?
Yeah, because this is actually a preview product for my campaign setting, which is a much longer project called Modern Magic, which is essentially the urban fantasy setting that the cards came out of.
Oh, and so that's a project you're working on now, trying to get the cards out, obviously, sort of get them out there. But how's that project coming, the setting coming along? Because settings, they're a lot of work. So are you just starting it? Are you kind of in the middle of it? Are you getting close?
I would say, no, we're like 25% in. There's a lot of things to work out, especially when you have the Foundry module, on top of it. But it's also not a hard setting. I don't have a lot of custom rules. It's more about the flavor, right? I'm really going for that Constantine, Angel, Buffy kind of feel,
Okay.
right?
Okay, cool.
Supernatural, you know, in that ballpark, right? I'm also a huge Mage the Ascension fan. That was a
Oh,
game from White Wolf from many years back, so there's lots of, you know, flavor from that too. You know,
you're not
all the
changing the
things.
magic system, are you? Are you changing the power system?
No, no, no.
Sorry.
No, I might add a few like extra spells or something, but no. I mean, at best, sometimes I do use the no PowerPoint rule, but one of the reasons I'm using Suede in the first place is I like how spells and powers work, to be honest.
I do too. I do too. I love the flavor, you know, and you're trapping things, and so there's not the magic missile, Melf's acid arrow, ice bolt. You know, it's all sort of flavor as opposed to every individual spell has to have its own description, even though they're like 90% the same thing. I love how those guys have thought about it from a Savage World standpoint, for sure, for sure. So cool. So you get another project. This is how far along are you on the cards? Because I'm looking at them and they're beautiful. They're gorgeous looking.
Now, I sent you a UI tech demo earlier today. You might be able to take some footage from that where I was setting up. You know, it's still not even quite beta, but you know, I was going over where the menus are and the play surface. Right, I got a picture of a table, and it's got the cards on the table, and it's got a big magical vortex in the middle where you can drop the cards, and so it's coming along. I mean, I've gotten 3 cards written, the macros for them, and that means I have, you know, 50 something more to go. But you know, that's just a matter of time. I'm working out all the hard problems right now, which is how to package the module so like everything's nice and neat for everybody. And when I'm done, I really want my products to help Savage Worlds GMs in Foundry, because when you get dropped into Suede and Foundry, you are in the deep end, right? So, you know, doing anything that makes it easier to find information. When this deck comes out, I'm making a tutorial video, and it's going to be right on the play surface where you can click it. So there'll be written instructions along with the tutorial video and how to set it all up, right? All those little settings that you have to go into Foundry and tweak depending on what you want, that's all going to be laid out.
That's
right.
cool.
Just kind of step it up. When you get a module from me, I expect you to be at least a Foundry newbie, maybe even a Suede newbie.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. For like my campaigns, one of my players is the Foundry expert. So he's always going in and creating the effects and creating the stuff for the other players. Wow, it's like, hey, you leveled up and now you've got this thing. Let me create this and do this and do this. And I almost never touch it. So I'm like practically a noob as far as, you know, customizing Foundry. I write my own scripts and macros, but I don't tend to get into the sheet and use the wizard and all that kind of stuff to just to kind of, I want to make sure. So you sent me a video. Maybe I'll be able to pull that up and chop it in so people can see a little bit. That would be cool if I can do that. You've got a lot of the cards art. They look gorgeous. You're 25% or so in. I think you are on like getting the cards all programmed up. You've got a few things. And I'm guessing that a lot of that'll be duplicate. You know, again, it's software, right? So I got a new effect, but I know how to program effects. And so now it's just a matter of layering another one on. So you'll get some acceleration as you go through the cards, I'm guessing, as you have things that are similar to each other in some shape or form, or hopefully.
Yep, and you know, just some nice, you know, quality of life stuff. Like for instance, if you're going to do a banish card mechanic, you better give people "Are you sure?" dialogue box before they play it, right? Because if they accidentally play the banish card, whoosh, it's gone. And so, just like little things like that, you know.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, well, hey, thank you so much, Jeff, for being with us on the show. I think we've all learned something about adventure cards that we might not have known. Some good tips. I really like I really like the idea of having cards that can kind of be played once in a campaign that are interesting, and then the players can think when to use them. That's awesome. And then ways to tweak the system. So I think it was a really great conversation. I hope everybody got something out of it. Again, Jeff Spring, founder of Cartoon Villains, working on Deck of Shadows. I got it right this time, which is going to be a Foundry specific, right? For Foundry, yes. Automated, everything you need, animations, all, taking all advantage of the computer technology that you have when you're playing online. Very cool. Great. You got any last thoughts for everybody watching?
Yeah, I'm always looking for playtesters for this stuff. That's been really hard because, I don't want to just drop things onto the Foundry store, that, I'm playtesting it, but that's kind of like life in a vacuum a little bit. So, I was on the PEG live showcase, and I got one or two people that are helping me out. Want to shout out to Knights of the Smith Dinner Table and John Doom.
Yeah, I love the Knights.
They're helping me out big time.
So if somebody's interested in helping out, do some play testing, should they jump on your Discord? And
absolutely. My Discord is for, you don't even have to be a Suede lover, but if you're a Suede lover, and you want to see what I'm up to, or just play co-op video games and other stuff, it's a mellow and chill server, it's not very big.
Very cool. Very cool. So jump on. I'll make sure I leave the link to the Discord server so you can jump on, offer to help out. The cards are they're really nice. So I think you'll enjoy helping play test where, the material is in good shape. So I think that's going to be, I think you really enjoy them. And it's really tailored really nicely to kind of modern dark fantasy, kind of urban fantasy sort of thing. So it's a great, if you're running that, give it a try. I think you'll surprise your players with kind of cool stuff that they haven't seen before, and that'd be great. So again, Jeff, thanks so much for being on. I love getting a chance to see new content and new people who are creating stuff. I love to talk about it. Obviously, I like to talk about Savage Worlds and always get a chance to see new products. So I appreciate you jumping on with me to chat about it and maybe teach some people a little bit about adventure cards. And we will catch everybody in the next video. Thanks again for watching. This is Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubble. Come on, Jeff. Give me a look at the bubbles. Come on, look at the bubbles. Give me one. Give me a look at the bubbles. Look at the bubbles. Look at the bubbles. Do the stuff, and we'll catch you next time. All right. One I know. Best game today. Savage World. Benny. Enhance my play. Savage World. Different setting in it.